Dominic Thierrien, a small-town boy to second place in the world. The unforgettable years of one incredible ride. Dominic Thierrien of Pointe-Lac hopes to join the World BMX Elite. We'll have more on this shortly. Dominic Thierrien has been living in France for almost a year. Dominic Thierrien is competing in the World Championships. Monday at 11:30 a.m. we have Dominic Thierrien, one of the top BMX racers in the world. This young man will spend the next 4 months in Europe to race with the professionals of the sport. Dominic Thierrien, 15, 1993 Canadian champion, will be there tomorrow. It's a friendly Quebec, Ontario meetup. When facing world champs, you have two mindsets. Either you see your shortcomings or you see how bad you are. Dominic Thierrien, who excels in this sport, had to head abroad to get better. Now 19, he hopes to make a living from the sport. Now, BMX with Dominic Thierrien. As you'll see, he goes from one championship to the next. He now lives in France, but returns regularly because of his visa. Now, here's our report on this BMX enthusiast. It doesn't work unless you have fun. Even at the top, you have to enjoy the competition in order to also develop an unshakable confidence. He's back to Europe in October, where he's picking up a proper French accent, but also having a cycling lifestyle that only the old world can offer. His return is still undecided. Richard Le, Pointe-Lac.
Okay, riders, random start. Riders ready, watch the gate.
Voilà, c'est parti pour la dernière demi-finale. Maintenant, on va passer au grand final de tout à l'heure avec un fabuleux départ en l'occurrence de la part de Thierrien Dominique Deschamps.
And he's a proud Quebecois, not Canadian, but Quebecois. Mr. Dominic Thierrien. Dominic, your thoughts? Well, it's... Dominic Thierrien, who we can see in Gate 4, won the Canadian Championships in Hamilton last summer. Dominic is joined today by someone important to him. Alan's got a lot of media experience. Dominic Thierrien, 19, a cyclist from Pointe-Lac, has worked relentlessly for many years to become successful in the sport and reach greater heights. Dominic got hooked on this sport 11 years ago. Led by his father, he's developed his own style. This young Canadian impresses, but everyone knows, him included, that there's still a long road ahead. I can see what needs to be done. That's why I train with them. But I want to be faster than them. I don't want to boast, but it's how I think. I can't believe it. I'll be with pros all day long. It's all I will do, all the time. He relies on a sponsor to give him a helping hand. But what he needs is a job, which might come about soon. I started out on my own. He'll be seeing former rivals. He has a few surprises for them. Dominic Thierrien. Dominic, your thoughts on racing with these pros? Well, it's great, and we've also got Alan Davila from the U.S.
Alan, what do you think of this race this year? Is it as good as...
Yeah, this race is awesome every year. I like to get the thing. Good times in Crabtree.
Mike
Gonzalez, that's his first time also. He's one of the top riders in the U.S.
You having a good time?
Yeah, we're having a
Harley Kelly, what do you think of this race format and how things are going today?
It's definitely awesome.
Damien Lachance, our pro champion in 2000. After a little break, he's back better than ever.
So Damien, what do you think of Crabtree this year?
It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of people, a lot of pros come out here. Just have fun.
Gate goes down, the Fast and the Furious are out of here. It's going to be, I'm going to go Gonzalez, no. Harley Kelly, Lachance, let's see if we can pick up that first place spot out of c'est Dominique Terrier avec Kelly en deuxième, Lachance en troisième. Guys in it for the four, Zulu in there for the five, but it's going to be Dominique Terrier. Terrier en première. Terrier taking this one home on there for the two. That's going to be Harley Kelly, maybe not. Here comes Lachance at the line.
Best of luck in this championship. Having said this, I officially declare this 1999 World Championship in France opened. Thank you very much.
Dominic raced in Europe for a total of 5 years and moved his career to the US in 2004.
In the United States, racing has always been more about a show and money and going through races after races after race. As far as in Europe, it's more of a championship where there is an off season when you can actually train, as opposed to making a living as a professional athlete, going from race to race to race over and over. And that volumes of racing become your training session. When we race, in Europe, we have races that are in order of importance. Let's say 1 to 5. 5 being the most important race. 5 would obviously be something like a European Championship, that final main event where they would count for double as far as point class and things like that. The UCI, the World Championship, would be a big number 5. It would be a very important race. However, there's a lot of time where there would be these little small races that would be in the middle of a winter in France, where we would just use these races as a form of test to see where we're at. How is our acceleration? Is our technique okay? Am I making smart move in the corner? So it is okay to kind of sacrifice those races to not show up at your best. So a lot of time those races, as an example, we would do a training session at the gym. Our legs would still be very heavy and tired, and we would hit the race like the very, very next day. So we would have these races from 1 to 5 as level of how important they were. And our trainer would kind of prepare these races. There's quite the science into this, because to be able to be at your 100% for one event, it is not possible to be able to maintain that level throughout 6 months of a season. You will be tired from racing and racing and racing. And so the beautiful science in this as a trainer is to know exactly when do we build our strength, when do we build a technique. I have made many mistakes, showing up, riding very, very, very strong in a starting season where I was flying on the track. And to the eyes of everyone, that seems like a good thing, but it was a concern for my trainer, because he knew that I would eventually crash. And so that I crashed, and I was not able to finish the season as strong as I could have, especially when the World Championship came. And so I had to deal with racing with 80% of my capacity. And those were mistakes we've made. Those mistakes I've made because I was stubborn and I wanted to do what I had to do. And eventually, listen to my trainer more, fix things, and to try to peak these races at the right time. And so we were doing all of these things in a way where we would show up very strong. As racer, we have weaknesses. So let's say your acceleration is not strong enough. Well, you have to deal with that through the entire season. It's almost like a handicap that you're carrying with you throughout the season, because you don't have the time to fix that issue. To fix that issue would require to go back to the gym, strengthen your PR, your max, and not only that, but there's a heck of a lot of work that you need to do to get stronger in the gym, but also to transfer that strength and put it on a bike. So all of these things takes a heck of a lot of time. If you're in the middle of the championship and you have to go from race to race to race to race, you just don't have the time to clean that up, So you have to compensate with that with other strength that you have. I was like, I don't have the strongest acceleration right now, but I'm going to compensate to make sure that my timing out of the gate is 100% perfect. I'm going to make sure that my technique is clean. Whether you use smart lines and corner, you have to kind of work with what you have, and you have to deal with that. And then when the season is over, then you go to vacation for a week or two. Then when you come back, then you have month and month to finally fix that issue. And so that by the time the next season comes, you're like a new rider. It's like, okay, now you no longer have to worry about that. And then of course you find something else to worry about. But for the most part, you cannot get that specific into your training if you just go from race to race to race to race, collecting the paycheck out of every single race and make your living that way. It comes a point where you need to break the season down, and that's what I think that in Europe they do extremely well. It was quite the science to see how they were working over there to prepare the athlete, me being one, and to actually experience. It was amazing. My favorite time of the year is when we sit down at the table and build a roadmap. It's like, okay, so what are we doing this season? Are we targeting the World Championship? Or are we targeting the European Championship? Sometimes we target these things that way. Or sometimes we don't worry about it and be like, you know what, we're going for the World Championship. And I remember having this conversation with my trainer, And it is literally a decision that you are making as far as, hey, this year, this is what we're doing. And I remember leaving those conversations, these meetings, you know, with my team and my trainer, and I had 100% clear vision as far as what my path would be to how I would handle the season, and those are great experiences to have. When I race in the United States, they didn't quite think like that. You know, they just go from race to race to race to race, which is good and all, but to me in Europe, this is where the quality is.
Et c'est parti chez les trois encore. On a Dominic Thierry, George Brichette et Harley Kelly. Thierry avec Gnarly Harley. It's going to be Thierry, Kelly, 1 and 2. Check out the battle we got going on for third here with Pat Parker and George Brichette. But it's going to be Thierry taking this one home. Gnarly Harley in there for the 2. Brichette sneaking in for the 3. Parker in there for 4.
The EBF race was so important to me. I remember sitting down with my trainer when we were actually negotiating how important those races would be. And on the EBF, I put a big number 5 and I highlighted it. It was a race that meant almost, it didn't mean a whole lot, you know, it was not affiliated to any important championship. It was just a race that a gentleman in Quebec put together. His name is Dylan Vanier. And he would invite amazing rider from United States, top rider in America was there. You invite all the top rider in Canada. I mean, anywhere in the world that people wanted to come to Quebec and race, this was the opportunity for an exchange of a big chunk of cash for the winner. So, you know, that always does the trick, you know, to bring pro over. And that race, Crabtree, happened to be in my hometown in Quebec where it all started. And so for me, I raced my whole life in Quebec. You know, I developed a relationship with most of the riders over there. We were almost like a BMX family, going from race to race to race with my dad. I mean, I've got countless memories of things that we would do on the road. And so when I left in France, I completely left that because I wanted to pursue my dream of become, you know, world number 1, hopefully. And I left. So I was followed by the media well, so people could continue to follow my career. But when other rider in Quebec would target an important race in the United States, I wasn't there at all because my focus was on a French championship or a European championship. Every time there would be amazing races that they would go to, even a world championship, well, if my trainer and I didn't make that decision to target that specific race, I wasn't going to be there. And so for like 4 years, I was building my career, and no one was able to ever see any of the results. They would follow me in the media, on TV or newspaper or whatever it is, and then that was it. And even after the season was over, when I would come back to Quebec, I was on vacation. And in fact, my trainer was telling me, was advising me to not race, just get my brain a break, you know. Those things get hard, and then once you're rested, then you go back in September in France, and then again you make that decision, and then you build that new season that we decide to do. And so I would go back to Quebec and ride with my friends on the local tracks and do some clinics with the kids, and it was fantastic. But they have never seen me race at an important race, and this race was my opportunity to go to Quebec, in my hometown, in front of everyone, and do well.
Demi-finale numéro 2. Dominique Terrien de Pointe-Lac, Eric Schneider, Patrick Dion, Pat Barber for Keller, and Ray Pika. Gate goes down, it's gonna be, oh, here goes Keller and Schneider. No, that's gonna be Dominique Terrien. Terrien to outside. Schneider in there for the 2, they'll pick up that 3, I'm gonna go Keller. Parker in there for the 4. Dion gets in, and that's not being a good race with the 0. But it's gonna be Terrien, Schneider.
I remember I had more pressure riding this tiny little race in Quebec. I mean, it was not a tiny race, you know, there were like a lot of heavy riders over there, but this race that couldn't be compared against the World Championship. When you go to big races, you have nothing to prove to anyone. You show up to the race, you do your job, it's you and your trainer, our stopwatch, our times, it's our work, and we do this and we do well, and it goes good, and if we don't do good, we analyze what went wrong and we fix it and we go back to the race. So I would just do the season as a job. But to go back in my hometown where there's people from all over the world showing up in my hometown and all of my fans, like I had to do well. I could not go to that race and screw it up. It was also an opportunity for my dad, for me to show my dad that all of his effort that he's put trying to bring me to a point where I could just go in Europe and live there, that they did not do this for nothing. I was not in Europe wasting my time. I had a job to do over there and I was doing it well. I was serious about it. And they always knew that I was. But this was the test where I'd be like, hey, this is what I do. This is what we work like, and with my trainer. And when we put the race, we focus on it. And so I treated the ABF as if it were to be the World Championship. I remember my trainer was mad about it because I took a whole month to prepare for that race alone. Didn't even know what race was that, what championship belonging to. I just told him that this was non-negotiable, that this race was the most important race of the year for me. And so I showed up to the race and I did my job, and of course everybody was there, and there's no way I was, in my mind, there's no way I was not going to win this race.
For the 3 of Keller.
Many athletes move abroad in order to become the very best. This includes Dominic Thierrien, who's been in France this year. But he travels back and forth in order to renew his visa. Richard Lowe went to meet this BMX enthusiast. Not all sports enjoy the same notoriety. Senior BMX athletes need to find the right training grounds in order to improve. Dominic Thierrien, who excels in this sport, had to head abroad to get better. There he finds greater competition befitting his high expectations. The young Canadian impresses, but everyone knows, him included, that there's still a long road ahead. I can see what needs to be done. That's why I train with them. But in order to beat them, it will take years of training. Every 3 months he returns home due to legal reasons such as his passport and visa. Despite extra costs and setbacks, this allows him to see his family. He relies on a sponsor to give him a helping hand. But what he needs is a job, which might come about soon. At this moment, I live in Paris, but I'll be going to Avignon. A BMX club there is looking for a trainer. No native French person fulfills the requirements there. Then I'll be able to apply for residency. As for competitions, the French quarterfinals will take place next week, and he hopes to reach the finals in 3 weeks' time. In my category, 19 Pro, I'd like to win the final. I should pass the quarter, but nothing is certain. No World Championship this year due to his budget, but Dominic keeps one goal in his sights: the 2001 World Championship in the U.S. He'll be seeing former rivals there. He has a few surprises for them. Richard Lowe, Pointslac. There's a lot happening. In BMX yesterday, following his return home, after 4 months in France, Dominic Thierrien came back from competing in the BMX World Championship, cyclocross as it's called in France. It worked out well. Here's what he said. Dominic Thierrien, 19 years old from Pointe-du-Lac, has worked relentlessly for many years to become successful in this sport and reach greater heights. He spent months in France to perfect his technique among the best. The first 2 months were tough, even discouraging, for this young man who thought he stood among them. He believed in himself, but reality was cruel. When facing world champs, you have two mindsets. Either you see your shortcomings, or you see how bad you are. When I got here, I had that second mindset. I saw what I was lacking, and I felt discouraged. He soon passed to the next stage in his development, of always enjoying his sport and accepting to learn step by step. Here in Quebec, it's about winning with power. In France, it's different. It's less about power and more about technique. These results not only helped him climb the ranks, but stood him among the best. His World Championship results attest to this, placing second in the final. A single error prevented him from winning the final, but this race allowed him to pick up some big sponsors. A relief for his father, who trained him for many years, who follows his progress. He must have fun and believe in himself. If he feels negative pressure, he won't make it. It doesn't work unless you have fun. Even at the top, you have to enjoy the competition in order to also develop an unshakable confidence. He's back to Europe in October, where he's picking up a proper French accent, but also having a cyclist lifestyle that only the old world can offer. His return is still undecided. Dominic, how did you start? You race BMX, you go to World Championships, but it didn't happen overnight. No, I started out just doing things on my own. And then I found myself doing competitions everywhere. You were quite fidgety as a kid. Yes, that's because I used to be quite hyperactive. Instead of putting me on Ritalin, like all the other parents did, my parents said, if he wants to move, let him. If I ever mastered a sport, I was the kind of kid who'd lose interest and stop. When I started BMX, I'd see the older kids riding, and I was so impressed seeing the older kids do it. So I needed a bike. I had to ask my parents for one, and they didn't like to waste money. So then I started riding. So I started out and I did a local race. In Pointe-Lac, I won. Then for a second race, the Quebec Federation said maybe we could use him. They sent me to a bigger race, which still wasn't very high level, a regional race, and I finished first. My parents said there may be something in this. They signed me up to bigger races. Then I got hooked on the sport. I'd train every day. I really pushed myself. And I began to progress. It just grew like that, naturally, slowly. Yes, that's right. I'd go to school, then I'd train after school. I was bored. I hadn't ridden all day. Dominic was a ball of energy that was ready to explode ever since he was a kid. When we moved here, there was a BMX track close to our home. Dominic was always gone to explore the whole town. Him and his friends. And the BMX track was so close by. And he quickly discovered that he liked riding on the track. And that got him to use up all his energy. So my parents bought him a BMX bike. One thing led to another, and it got more serious. When he started BMX, he was around 8 or 9. 7 or 8. It was more like the BMX track found him. The track was very close to our home. He found it while out on his bike. He'd go there every day. He was just so... His idea of play, his energy, made it so he'd spend almost half the day on the track. This calmed down his energy, his ADHD. But school was entirely another matter. All his attention went to BMX and not towards his schoolwork. This was always difficult. I won. I still got one race to go since the weather's good. Did you qualify expert? Even if I come in last, I'm an expert. Because of the point system, that's how it works. Still one race to go? Yeah, that's right. Got a chance at winning? Absolutely. You seem sure of yourself. Oh yeah. I'm killing it this year. There's Dominic. BMX and Dominic's life, there are no words to describe it. It was his entire life. There was never anything else. Without BMX, I don't know what this child would have done with his life. It really was the spark that got him to focus his attention. And that's where he bet all his chips. In a certain way, I think BMX saved my brother. Because my brother, let's be honest, he was a disaster in school. His mind was elsewhere. He couldn't concentrate. Dominic and school didn't go together. I don't know what he would have done in life if he hadn't excelled at BMX. I think he would have exploded if he didn't find an outlet for his energy. I'm convinced that BMX made him the person he is today. To be the parent of a child with ADHD, yes, it's very difficult. Both of you are in it together, but you may not agree on things. I was more in favor of Ritalin, so it wouldn't be so stressful for me, so he'd find things easier at school. My husband was 100% against it. He just wanted him to use up all his energy. It'll sort itself out later. Did it sort itself? He made a life for himself. He succeeded. I'm proud of him. But I'm sure it wasn't easy.
When we first moved to Arizona in 2014, Dominic went to some different BMX tracks and started talking to different people and realized that the way that they teach BMX here in the United States is very different than how they did it back in Europe. And he brought the technique and style from Europe here and started with a couple little students here and there, and it grew into several large 50 students plus clinics on a weekly basis, plus doing private training with some kids that went on to world championships. When he came here, he was so good with kids of every age, and I think the parents and the kids recognized right away that it was not only unique and different, but that his connection with the kids was profound, and he was able to get something out of them that most of the professionals couldn't in these types of clinics.
At my clinic with Dominic, we'd always go one step further. We'd learn things that you wouldn't see here. He brought techniques from Europe here. We did so many new things. It was very structured. We did so many clinics. Full days. It was intense. It really was a wonderful time. Most of the athletes thought that Dominic was not an alien exactly, but someone from another world. We were so impressed with what he was doing. We'd listen and learn from him so we could try to get better. Each time Dominic came back from France, it was always a classic. He'd organize BMX clinics, intensive training sessions, a week or a whole day, I've forgotten what it was, and it really worked. He'd got a lot of names of people who were interested in being trained by Dominic Therrien, who was returning from France. They all wanted to learn what Dominic had learned in France. It was always a big success.
Some of his students went on to do really amazing things. Brock Heffron was an adorable little guy when we first met him, and through Dom's training was twice the world champion in his division. And then also Dominique Daniels, who was just a powerhouse and a great kid, a young teenager when we first met her, and she was also world champion.
So let me talk a little bit about why I had my son train with Dominic Therrien. What I loved about him was I loved how focused he was on my child. He did not pay attention to me. He basically put all his focus onto my son, and he really wanted to bring out the best in my son, which over the course of years, he made my son become a better racer, a better child, and eventually a better man. the work ethic he has taught my son. He has taught my son how to work for what he wants. You know, I look at what my son is now at a 22-year-old man, and he's a hard worker. He's not afraid of work, and I really owe all that to Dominic.
Dominic didn't just teach technique, and he didn't just teach skill and power and all of that. He also taught sportsmanship, and that was really important to him. You don't throw your helmet. You don't talk badly about other teams. You know, it was really about being a good citizen and being a role model for the younger kids.
A lot of times I get asked, how did Brock become a world champion, and what was training sessions like with Dominic? When we met Dominic, the training sessions were a minimum of 3 days a week, at least an hour long. We did not go to the track in the very beginning. We started from ground zero. We chose Dominic because he not only was he available, but most importantly, he is already a world champion. I viewed Dominic as a fantastic rider. So I get asked once in a while how Brock viewed him. Brock thought he was the best rider he ever seen. So that made it real easy to get Brock in the car and go train with Dominic 3 times a week to learn how to ride like Dominic. I get asked, hey, what was the first session like when you trained with Dominic? Was that like the time that you knew you found the right guy? No, that wasn't the right time. Matter of fact, I left there thinking, what the heck were we doing here? Maybe I had the wrong guy. So why would I feel that way? So we showed up, I had this brand new Redline bike. I was told by the riders at the track that was the best bike. Redline's a very popular race bike and a big national team, and we show up with it at Dominic's place, and the first thing he looks at me and says, I can't help you today if you're gonna ride that bike. I'm like, what do you mean? That's a Redline bike, Dom. Don't you know that's a Redline bike, Dominic? I'm looking at him. That's a Redline bike. He looks at me. I said, I know what type of bike it is, John, but that bike is not going to work with if I'm going to train Brock. What do you mean it's not going to work? It's too big. Go get a different bike, and I want it a size smaller, and I want it to be a little bit smaller than what he needs. Now we got to do something with the cranks. I go, what do you mean the cranks? He goes, the cranks are too long. I said, well, cranks, what do you mean the cranks are too long? He said, well, that's the link from the bottom bracket to the pedal. It's too many inches, and I need it smaller. I need Brock to be able to keep his feet underneath him, and his feet move around too much, so I need a smaller crank. Okay. So we go get cranks. I come back a third time. Now, understand, we're still training. So I go, hey, I got the cranks and I got the bike. What do you think now? And he says, okay, now we're going to have to work on the handlebars are too big. I go, well, can't you tell me that? What do we need, Dominic? How much stuff do we need? He goes, no, just one thing at a time. You got your bike, got your cranks. Now we got to get the handlebars sized. They're too wide. Well, this is a standard size. And he says, well, if you want to be standard and race like everybody else, then you can ride in those handlebars. But if you want to be a world champion, go get these handlebars. We'll cut them down and put these up. So we did that. Then we come back and we show him, hey, we got these brand new clips. What do you think these clips are? Because Brock had to have clips to race and to be faster. And he said, well, you can take those clips off. We're not going to use those clips, and I'll let you know when you're ready to ride clips. Well, what do you mean, Dominic? We can't race without clips. He says, no, you're going to put pedals on, and we're going to ride with regular pedals and tennis shoes, and I don't care if you win a race right now. If you want to be or have an opportunity to be a world champion, we have to do all these things. Okay, so we're like, gosh, okay. So now the clips come off. So I go home and I'm looking. I got a brand new bike. We're not riding. I've got cranks that are too big. I got handlebars that are too big, and I got these nice $200 shoes we're not wearing. So we're training with Dominic, and we go out to the track, and we get our tails kicked. And so we come over, and Brock's upset, I'm upset, Mom's upset, how much money we're spending, is this the right guy? And we're training, and I just remember Dominic saying, well, when you came to me, you asked me if you wanted to be, if I could train you to be a world champion. And I said, well, yes, well, this is not working. And he said, well, if you wanted to be a world champion, you need a smaller bike, you need to learn how to ride a bike. You need the right cranks to learn how to pedal. You need the right handlebars so you can learn how to manual and jump and ride the bike. And then if you want to get into clips someday and end up sprinting by people and winning races, well, then why don't we do it in pedals first? An important part about BMX is we call gearing. And you can either spin real fast, like a 10-speed, for example. First gear, you sprint a lot to go up a hill, and 10th is when you get a little bit of resistance. And with BMX, we were told by Dominic to get into this gearing called a 51. What does a 51 mean? It means you really have to spin, and it takes a lot of energy. So you're spinning so fast that what happens is there's no resistance. And I used to think this was crazy because the other people were in higher gears and they seemed so smooth and they were spinning that bike, and we didn't feel we could keep up with them. And Dominic said to Brock and I is, soon as you can learn to ride that 51 and handle that gearing, that quick spinning, and manage that speed, when we go up, you're going to leave everybody behind. But you got to learn how to ride that quick spin without being out of control, having your feet kick out, and keep your posture on the bike. And I remember going to our first national and Brock winning, someone coming up to me saying, so what's your gearing? I go, 51. 51? And most people were in 54, 55. But as the year ended that year and Brock won several nationals, his competition were in 51s. The impact was worldwide with other riders Brock's age, because what they started doing was showing up in a smaller bike, smaller cranks, smaller handlebars, smaller gearing, and riding at practice in flats instead of clips. So the impact was worldwide with riders a year older than Brock, a year younger, and boys, specifically everybody Brock's age group wanting to be Brock. They were really becoming a young Dominic Theron. Did I ever become a great BMX coach after the years with Brock? I never became a great BMX coach, but what I did was became a great clone for Dominic Theron, because I had the privilege of being able to share our stories and, of course, everything what we did. And I remember we have a rider across town who was 4 years younger than Brock, who had a great career in the U.S., winning I think 7 or 8, maybe 9 Grand Nationals in a row, and his name was Bryce Batten. I believe won 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 age groups. So each one of those years was an age group. He only finished first. NAG 1. I think he had like 10 or 12 NAG 1s. National age group champion number 1. And of all the riders out there that wanted to imitate or copy or do whatever Brock was doing in the States or worldwide, that was Bryce Batten. So I was able to take what Dominic passed on to me via using Brock and share it with Bryce Batten, who eventually trained with Dominic, did everything that I shared with him that Dominic did. Then, of course, they went right to Dominic and bypassed me. So was I a good coach? Well, I got replaced by Dominic.
Coming back to the evolution of BMX, when he started out, when he started training with us, he tried out a few different things. There are different riding styles in Quebec and Paris. And there's the southern style, which wasn't quite the same. Very quickly, he was able to create last-minute training sessions. According to the rider's skill, age, speed, and other qualities, his sessions were well planned out. In the end, it worked out well. He stayed with us for a while. He did a pretty good job. We were sad to see him go.
Well, if I remember remember right, when Dominic left BMX, I think his focus or his direction, what he wanted out of life had changed. I believe it went to music, and that's why he left. I do know numbers. People ask me, well, the numbers go up and down. Well, numbers dropped. And what people found out is they thought all the tracks where Dominic was training at, and he was at 4 tracks, or maybe 5, 2 in Tucson, 3 in Phoenix, 5 tracks, 5 nights a week. Numbers were fantastic, and those numbers dwindled and they disappeared because the other people thought they could do what Dominic could do. And maybe they could do what Dominic could do, but the difference is Dominic wasn't in it for the money. Dominic wasn't in it for the money. Dominic was in it for the kids. For the kids. And that's what made the difference between Dominic. So we ask ourselves now, I ask who's training the kids at the tracks now. There's not going to be anybody like Dominic.
Creating Team Terrien was really a great experience for me to be involved with, as well as his partner at the time. We had a great group of kids. The parents were all super involved and really fun to hang out with. And going from race to race with, Team Terrien was a family affair. And again, we really wanted to make sure, and Dominic really wanted to make sure, that when we arrived on the scene, that those kids were seen as role models, as exceptional sportsmen on top of their ability and their technique, really making sure that we were seen as on a higher level in their personality and their behavior, not just in their skill.
Being able to ride with Dominic, he's very detail-oriented. He was very meticulous about the training and the approach that we took, whether it was, one evening we were working on gates, or one evening we're working on, skill work, and, that would be the focus. He was very meticulous in his approach, and it allowed me to kind of narrow in and focus on different aspects of BMX.
And I'll add to that because from a father's standpoint, I wasn't out there racing BMX, but I was there pretty much every single practice watching, him help train and mentor my son. And you could see that he truly did not only care about the sport and have a passion for the sport, but he also cared about the kids too. And, it wasn't just Ryan. I mean, we did private lessons with just Ryan and Dominic for a period of time also. But these group lessons, you could tell he enjoyed being around the kids and enjoyed kids, and could relate to them on their level and answer their questions, and they didn't feel intimidated by them. So it was from a father's standpoint, it was good to see that, and that's a big reason why we kept coming back.
The atmosphere during Dominic's clinics were not just fun and not just training hard. It was a combination. The encouragement that he gives to the kids was really made them want to impress him. They wanted to work hard. They wanted to show him that they appreciated what he was doing. And he would get so excited when a kid would master a new skill or do a really cool jump, and everybody would get excited. So it was a great payoff, especially for children, to see that excitement in their coach's eyes. I have very fond memories of very specific kids who are probably adults now and would make me feel very old, but there were at least 250 kids that he saw on a fairly regular basis, whether it be in the big group sessions or privately. I think, with the 50 kid or so per clinics and doing those multiple times a week, some kids came to more than one, but in general he probably saw 250 kids a week, and he knew all of them, and he knew their abilities, and he knew their names. It was incredible. At one point we had 3 or 4 gentlemen from Quebec that came down to Arizona to train with Dominic before the Olympics. It was very exciting for the BMX world to have that be an event in the Olympics, and because he's so well known in Canada, it was an honor for them to be able to send their guys down to train with him. And it was really interesting to hear their stories and their perception of who Dominic was, because they only knew him as like someone to idolize in their sport. But yeah, they got to come here. Quebec sent him here to train with him.
What sets Dominic apart from every other trainer we've had, and we've had tens and tens and tens of different trainers for my son. When we first met Dominic, basically what it was his just attention to detail was better than any trainer out there. He could pick out the smallest little things and perfect those little things. So with Dominic, it really isn't one big thing. It's these 1,000 little things that he would pick out in a rider and change it in a rider and make that person a better rider. Plus, the way he connects with kids and people is just, it's fantastic. I mean, my kid loved training with Dominic.
You know, we met Dominic, and he was, you know, at least meeting him the first time, I definitely remember that, and, you know, welcoming me with a big smile and saying, hey, like, we're going to get you to where you want to be. And it was just one random day at the tracks, another day, and it turned into one of the best things that happened to me in racing. As I got older, the longer I raced, the more I realized everything that he was teaching me and all of his skills really were elite. I have a couple stories that I think of when it really shows his skills. Like the first time he showed me how to manual, and I fell on my butt literally probably like 50 times, and got sent home just because I was crying too much in my mind. And but I remember watching him ride these trails just so effortlessly, and it was so impressive. And I was like, wow, like one day I really want to do that, and one day hopefully I could ride with Dominic like that too. Before my first World Championship race in Canada, Dominic was coming over a couple times a week and making sure that I was in shape for that, and he had me doing these like interval sprints, and I've never been so exhausted in my life, and because they were like a quarter mile long, just sprinting for 4 seconds on, 4 seconds off, and I didn't understand it until I got to the track, and then I realized that racing is these 4 second intervals of sprints. Like you're sprinting to the next jump, you're sprinting coming out of the turn, and it all made sense. And you know, it just like the drills that he would have you do were, you know, it was like people had thought of them before, or you didn't need to explain them. They explained themselves once you experienced it in a race.
Interesting question we get asked is people reference, hey, when you went to Worlds and you got upset with Brock because he wasn't speaking with the other riders there, and we're at a World Championship, and you realized that a majority of the riders didn't speak English. Well, did Dominic, being French Canadian, Canada, France, how was his English? Well, his English was terrible. And we had to ask Dominic many times to repeat himself, explain himself, what was he trying to say, and boy, I'm sure we frustrated him at times, but you know what? He laughed and never got frustrated. Dominic just smiled and laughed and never turned away, never got frustrated, didn't quit, and now here we are 16 years later, and his English is pretty good. I miss the old Dominic.
Dominic's lived in the United States about 15 years, and I'm still not quite sure about his English. It's unique, and in the beginning, I don't know that the kids understood a word he was saying. His English was very minimal, and what he did say, he had such a thick accent, and there were a lot of Dominic-isms that the kids would repeat because they didn't really, once they realized what he was saying, it was so funny how he would put the words together that it kind of became something cute to tease him about.
We get asked, did that interfere with Dominic's training when he was training all those wonderful kids? No, it didn't interfere, because you know what Dominic could do? Dominic could get on the bike and show the boys. If he couldn't speak it, he would just get on the bike and show it.
Dominic was one of those guys with his riding skills that literally was kind of poetry in motion. You love to watch him ride a bike. Actually, I love to watch him ride a bike because it was just effortless. He flowed so beautiful. It was almost, if you could say ballet on a bicycle, that's what it would be like. Pretty amazing stuff. You could just sit there and watch Dominic ride for hours and hours and it would never get old.
As a rider, you could tell it was him, even with the helmet and the gear and everything on. Even if you didn't know what color he was wearing or what color his bike was, you could tell it was him. He had such a smooth style. It's like he and his bike were one. It was like part of a machine together working through, and it was so fluid.
So I'm going to share a little story about Dominic. There was one of my neighbors had a backyard track, and we used to go there and train. And like I said earlier, I could just sit there and watch him ride, and it was just effortless. And the thing is he wasn't doing it to impress you. That was just his work ethic. It was amazing.
Dominic was the pride of Quebec. This guy was the poster child for the sport, for BMX abroad. So, to us, Dominic was the best BMX rider we ever had. We'd see him come back to Quebec, and it was just so impressive. He was on a different level to the athletes in Quebec. There was a world of difference. It was beautiful to watch Dominic ride. It was smooth. The guy was just magic. It was impressive because Dominic was one of the best riders in the world. Dominic was racing with all these guys almost every weekend. For us here, it was impressive to see. A kid from our neck of the woods riding with the world's best? Wow. Technically, Dominic was on top of his game. He would ride an entire track on his back wheel, win races without a bike chain. So to be able to do that, your technique needs to be impeccable. And Dominic was simply on top of his game. To be able to hang with the pros, there's no shortcut. You have to be a pro. You have to be the best, and Dominic was all that.
Man does not know when to stop. He trains harder than anyone I've ever seen, and I was an athlete as well, and I've never seen anyone push so far past the line. I remember, he's not a bulky guy. He's very lean, and watching him squat 400 pounds on a free bar. I mean, it's superhuman what he's able to do. And even though he was a sprinter, he has stamina that's just incredible.
One word: work, work, work. To achieve such a high level, yes, he is talented, but he also worked hard for it, and that was Dominic. If you needed to find Dominic, he was at the track. He was riding, working on his technique, riding the jumps in different ways. There's nothing more to explain. It's all work. His willpower, his perseverance, and his relentlessness are... Dominic had never aimed for anything less than the top.
plus bas que la. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a de meilleur? C'était toujours
He always
le
wanted to be the
meilleur,
best
le
of the
meilleur,
best.
le meilleur. Il a même
He even won a championship race
gagné un championnat avec
with broken ribs.
des côtes de cassé.
He won the darn
il a gagné
championship.
le championnat. Son
His
acharnement,
relentlessness to be the best and winning,
être le meilleur et gagner. Mais il a
well,
réussi.
he succeeded. For Dominic, I think it was his tenacity, his perseverance, his stubborn nature. He wanted to be the best at all costs. Was always switched on. He trained all the time. Rest was never an option. So this allowed him to win and improve in BMX competitions. He was always at it, training nonstop. That's how he got better. He was throwing up after his training sessions because he was so exhausted. The training sessions were just so intense. I always knew he'd go far in that sport. His whole heart was in it. I have 3 kids. They are my pride and joy. But my brother has always been one of my idols. Dominic Therrien, practice run, Crabtree, 2003.
That's gonna be Kelly! Kelly and Billy Ryder! Oh, Billy qui essaie de rattraper ça! Ça va être là, ça va être... We lose another rider. It's gonna be Kurt Bichette going down hard on that asphalt. We're gonna check him out. The meantime, ça va être Dominic Therrien qui va la tête. In there for the 2, it's gonna be gnarly. Harley, baby. In there for the 3. Let's go.
Over time, Dominic turned out to be a role model. He was for a long time. Even when he was in France or the US, Dominic was a role model and a sporting pioneer for BMX in Quebec. His name became famous and still is to this day. People still know of him. Dominic was an idol to the other racers. In fact, last year at my job, while I was working, one of the sinks got blocked. It broke, so a plumber came. He recognized me. I didn't know who he was. It had been a long time. He said to me, "Are you Dominic Therrien's mom?" I said, "Yes." Dominic Therrien, the BMX guy. I'd watch him on the track when he'd do his big jumps. My jaw dropped. Dominic was my idol. That's who Dominic was to the people. To the people here in Pointe-du-Lac. He was their idol. Everybody knew him. Being the sister of a BMX champ, this meant that everyone knew me through my brother. Nobody recognized me, but wherever I'd go, when people asked my name and I said Miriam Therrien, they'd say, "Oh, you know Dominic Therrien? Of course, he's my brother. Oh, we know him. He's that BMX champion." Everyone in Quebec knew about Dominic Therrien. They didn't know he had a sister, but it was me. Dominic Terrien, who we can see in Gate 4, won the Canadian Championship in Hamilton last summer. He wants to compete in the World Championship. I might still come back to race the Canadian Championship in Alberta. I would love to keep my title, but it may not happen because I'll be in France, and I will focus on the World Championship. In France, there are races of that level, if not even higher. Now 19, he hopes to make a living from the sport. I was living in Paris back then. One of my friends said, "There's a Canadian guy coming. He's a BMX rider in Canada. He's quite good. He's looking for a place to stay. He's coming to France to train, to compete in competitions and become the world champion." At first, I was expecting an American pro, since Canadians are like Americans. For us Europeans, it was like, wow, a Canadian is coming. He's Canadian champion. He wants to be world champ, so I expected a super pro. So I took him to a spot where we all trained, a trail where we'd all train together. I was surprised because he didn't know how to do anything on his bike. He was such a mess. We thought it was due to jet lag, but after a week it was still the same. So it wasn't the jet lag. There was a big difference between the level in Canada and the level in Europe and the United States. But anyway, he came to live with me. We became friends. We'd always train together. He started out here as a complete beginner. He learned everything from scratch. And he reached the World Championships. He was hardworking and serious. Training every day, conditioning, sprinting, hill work, technique. We taught him everything from A to Z. We spent hours on our bikes. Mornings, we'd do weights. After, we'd do sprints. Then we'd come back for breakfast. In the afternoon, we'd head to the BMX track. We'd work on our technique. And we'd often go out riding in the evenings on the trail. We'd train 7 to 8 hours a day. It went quite quickly. It took only 1 year for him to reach a really high level. When he got here, he didn't even have the basics. Within 1 year, he reached the World Championships. So his progress was rapid. But it was a lot of work. It's not something you learn overnight. You get up at 7 a.m. and work until 7 or 8 p.m. Practicing on our bikes, sprinting, going to the gym. The work we did really was 24/7. We were 3 to 4 guys, and we always trained together. We'd go to tracks in and around Paris. We did all the tracks in Europe. The French Cup, the Europe Cup, we went everywhere together. Dominic is 100% determined. When he's got an idea, he won't change his mind. He'll go all the way in order to reach his goal. Dominic lived in France for a total of 5 years and placed second in the world. Dominic was signed by a professional racing team called R-Trax. He traveled all around the world and raced for over a decade. At 8 years old, Dominic said, "One day I will be among the best and I will travel the world racing with the professionals." Today, as we can see, the young boy knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life. Dominic had made it. He was a professional in the sport of BMX, making a living doing what he always wanted to do.
Alors les blaireaux, à Bernac. On va s'échauffer. Hein? On va s'échauffer là. Bah toi.
Un nouveau départ, toujours et encore. La tenue Redline et en particulier Terrien Dominique du club des Andes. Dominique.
Ça sera pareil pour demain. Merci et bien rendez-vous demain.
Il y a Dominique Terrien, Jérôme Terrien, Xavier Omas également.
Dominic retired from his racing career in 2005 after his father, mentor, and friend had passed away. Yvon was teaching a BMX clinic at the local track of Pointe-Lac when his heart suddenly failed. On that same track where Dominic's journey began, Yvon's life had ended. The kids you see here, 2 of them are at a level to race triple expert. One of them already wins in those situations. And we teach the rest how to reach that level. To reach the qualifiers, you need to be at a triple expert level. That's why not many kids get through.
Ce qui donne un bon coup de main aux jeunes cyclistes, c'est que les équipements et les structures.
At my father's funeral, as sad as that day was, I think that was one of the most grueling days of my life. But it was filled with beauty. I'll always remember, from the funeral home all the way to the church, everyone else walked, but there were kids on their BMX bikes, following the family, in order to pay homage to Yvon. I'll always remember that incredible moment. And the other moment was when Dominic played his guitar in the church to pay his respects to Dad. He played a song on his guitar that my father had been learning for months, but he never finished. But my brother learned it a few days before the funeral in order to pay his respects and perform the song on guitar. That was a special moment. My brother was so skilled to be able to learn it and play it like that. He really is gifted. Dominic kept his composure the whole time.
C'est ça. Fait qu'il a joué ce morceau.
That was the piece he played.
Ensuite, il a parlé.
Then he spoke.
Il a fait une belle oraison.
He gave a beautiful eulogy about his life with
de
his
son
father.
vécu avec son père. C'était vraiment, vraiment
It was really
touchant.
touching.
Ça venait
It came
vraiment
from deep in his heart.
profond de son cœur. Puis c'est là que,
You could really tell how close he was to his father,
de son père, malgré toutes les
despite all the obstacles and fights that can get in the way.
C'était vraiment
He was his other half.
sa moitié. C'est sa moitié qui partait.
His other half had gone.
Le club de
The Pointe-du-Lac Club came to his funeral service.
Ont assisté à ses funérailles et ils ont tous été
All of them rode to the cemetery on their bikes.
au cimetière en vélo. C'est par une belle journée.
The weather was good. It was a beautiful day.
C'était vraiment touchant.
It was very touching to see
de voir qu'il était apprécié.
That the youth really appreciated him.
Mais le fait que
Given that Yvon was a trainer,
son entraîneur aussi, ils passaient leur journée
they'd spend their days together training.
leur entraînement ensemble. Fait que c'est une complicité.
They had a bond that's rare to see between a father and his son. Yvon had a way of noticing
de remarquer et d'étudier toutes
and
les
studying technique. Since the Pointe-du-Lac Club didn't have a trainer at the time, Yvon started to get more and more involved. Dominic was already taking part. Then Yvon took courses to increase his knowledge. Courses in this discipline. The track in Pointe-du-Lac is really Yvon's track. He redesigned it, he remodeled it. He worked on it so many times. I remember seeing him in his old red blazer, packing the jumps with it. He really left a big mark on BMX in Quebec. He lost his life, but trained one of the great BMX champs, if not the greatest BMX champ that Quebec has ever seen. It was Yvon who trained him.
Dominic and his father were so close. And he passed way too soon. He was too young. And I think that the unexpected nature of his passing, as well as the fact that they would talk on the phone for 2 hours a day. I don't know what they were talking about for that long, but they're both talkers and they just shared everything with each other and they'd get all riled up and passionate and so to have that gone from his life, I think was just such a tremendous void. And I know his mom always said that his dad Yvon would fill the room with his personality, and it's true, and it created a huge void.
Dominic was Yvon's pride and joy. While he was away in France, when he would meet up with friends, he'd always be talking about Dominic nonstop. It was always about Dominic. He was so proud of him, so very proud. He'd say, I always knew that he'd go far. I had always known. With all his talent, there is no way he could fail. But Dominic worked hard for it too.
Yvon maybe thought Dominic walked on water. He was so... I don't want to say obsessed because I have children and of course I'm obsessed with them, but he was so unbelievably proud of Dominic and what he accomplished. He stood behind him 100% all the time and just was overjoyed by every accomplishment.
At Pointe-du-Lac
this weekend,
for
the BMX fans, there's an inter-province BMX competition. Top riders from Quebec and Ontario will be here Saturday and Sunday. Dominic Therrien, 15, 1993 Canadian champion, will be there tomorrow. It's a friendly Quebec-Ontario meetup. But it's still important to me. It will be an opportunity to put Quebec on the map. And once the championship is over, once this meetup is over, it will be our turn to go to Ontario and meet the Ontarians. My father was just as invested in the sport as Dominic was. They were both committed enthusiasts. My father would only talk about BMX all the time. You couldn't start a conversation with my father without him ending up talking about BMX. My friends were so intrigued, they joined the conversation because my father was so passionate and engaging. It was part of his life. BMX may have been his whole life. He truly loved it. In BMX, Dominic Therrien takes the victory in Pointe-du-Lac. He came in first in the 15-plus category. Seeing them setting off on their journey together, packing the car, the tent, everything they might need, they both set out happy. It was a nice thing to see. It was nice. I envied them. I was able to go a few times. I liked it. But when I'd see them set out, they were in their own world. You gave me the most beautiful memories that life can offer. Even though many couldn't understand. You gave me the opportunity to live the life that you never had. Through difficulties and challenges, you always pushed me toward my dreams. Alive in my memories, you will always be the one guiding me. No matter where, no matter what, I will never forget you. Through your memories, I will teach my children the world. For as long as I live, I would do anything to live once again each moment that we had together. I wish I could show you what I've done with my life. But your life was very difficult. Wonderful, but with many unexpected challenges. You deserve to rest. Your time came. You were in a good place. Alive in my memories, you will always be the one guiding me. I will never forget you. Through your memories, I will teach my children the world. For as long as I live. have always been more than a father to me.
Était plus que mon père.
You have always been my best friend, far more than what a son could ask for a father. Wherever you are now, it is only a matter of time until we meet again. You will always be the one guiding me, no matter where, no matter what. I will never forget you. Through your memories, I will teach my children the world. Forever. A song will never be long enough to share to the world the memories I have from you. Thank you for the wonderful journey. Yvonne Therrien, 1951 to 2005. The unforgettable years of One Incredible Ride was not an easy journey. I could not have done it alone. To those who contributed in giving me that opportunity, I would like to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Dominic Therrien.